All right. Good morning, and thanks for listening in to us today. My name's Lara Gregory, and I am a coach who works with adults around relationships and intimacy. And I'm here having a conversation with Jill Prescott. Generally, the theme, very general, is just her experience being a woman in the world today, and maybe touching on her relationship to her body, her sexuality, and how she does relationships or experiences relationships. Yeah, just intended to be a casual conversation for Jill to share whatever part of her story she wants to. And thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting topics that you've chosen to make public, which is great.
I'm hoping, my hope is that somebody listens and gets something from it that supports them in their life. That's literally the goal. Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to say that my how I am around my body and sexuality and everything at age 54 is very, very different than it was when I was younger. So if I consider my relationship to myself when I was younger, there was a huge attachment to my body looking a certain way and my prowess sexually.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of identity tied up in that, of really my willingness to be a sexual woman. And I had a massive awakening in that area after my divorce, my first divorce with a partner. It really became almost, it was almost like part of a transaction in relationships. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, yeah, I hear that, what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really like a way to keep somebody in my life or to get somebody. It was a power thing. Like I knew that I was good at it, so I could be the one to end it when I was over it. So there was a lot of that, and a lot of concern about my body, in the way of there was always like an assumption that I would always have a great body, because why wouldn't I? I did whatever I wanted and my body was great, period.
Got it. Yeah.
So lots of identity around that. And then I went through a really challenging period when I hit perimenopause hard. And that would probably been about 6 years ago now. I started to gain weight and my body really started changing. Now, understand, I hadn't been 100 pounds ever. I hadn't ever gotten to 100 pounds.
Oh, like you were smaller than, lighter than 100. Little. You were petite. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So, it was, by the time I was about 40, 41, I sort of got to that 100 pound mark, maybe 102, 103, but I was always tiny. I always had it. But the interesting thing was I had a little waist and a big ass, and I loved that about myself. And so did many, many, many other people.
Right. Very appealing profile.
Yes, it was an appealing profile. So, and then as I started to gain more weight in my body, so I think I'm probably 115, 16 now, something like that, which doesn't seem like a big leap, except if you consider the percentage of body weight.
That would feel significant on your body, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, really significant. So for a while there, I was really challenged around that. And with my partner, Chris, and I have been together for 5 years now. My body's changed a lot in the last 5 years. Thankfully, he's somebody who doesn't care about that so much. And quite frankly, 90% of men don't. Nearly as much as we do.
They do, but
that's right, exactly. Yeah. So I really had to get into this practice of understanding what was happening with my body, taking a chance to honor the process that it was going through, because it was changing. And not just like randomly I started eating 5 bags of chips every day and drinking soda pop. It was none of that. I was actually the opposite. I was healthier than I'd ever been, and I am healthier than I have ever been. But my body was morphing to support this transition in my life where I went from being somebody who had a regular Mensa to not. So I started to have conversations with my belly, which was the part that was really obvious to me. You know, like that was the part that I was like, I know that I was thickening everywhere, but my belly in particular was, I always thought I would have a six pack. I thought I was always going to be a flat belly. So I started talking about this belly being that I was birthing the new age for myself. So I started finding ways to relate to it differently and to honor it and to connect with it in a different way. And then the coolest thing happened. For the first time in my life, I got boobs.
Right. Boobs are body fat, basically.
Right?
Yeah,
they were like,
I hold mine. Yes.
Right? I'm like, oh, these are like what I wanted when I was 18.
Yeah.
So, you know, now I just, not to say that I'm always like, wow, that's great. But most of the time, I'm like, very comfortable in my body now. Very comfortable, which is a really big shift for me in that way. So when I think back about all of the things that my body has carried and what it's been through and what it's survived, what I know to be true is that there's still work to do, even after all these years of being someone who helps women with trauma through their body and everything else, that it is so subtly multi-layered.
Yes.
So what I'm working on now is healing scar tissue. So lots of really, you know, first of all, physical, because we are humans in these very physical bodies, but also spiritual. So this capacity to hold spirit in the human form. So working in a way that my body is capable of opening enough to allow spirit to move through me to do that, the healing on that level. Well, I work with the physical.
Yes. Yeah. That, you know what? I actually literally just got like from around here down to my knees, a little bit of chills hearing you say that. Yeah.
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 Yeah. You know, I think that, and my body's been through a lot since the time I was born. They brought me home from the hospital. I got whooping cough, got taken back to the hospital and was resuscitated several times. So it's had a lot of trauma, that and assaults and miscarriages and ectopic imploding pregnancies and, you know, all kinds of things. So at this point, it really is, I feel, a time in my life, and I would say for any women going into menopause, to lay down the resistance to the changes in your life and start to consider that you're walking into an incredibly powerful time. You know, there's a space, and for most women, we stop giving a shit about what anybody else thinks of us to another degree. So, and we start.
These are brilliant for that, has been my experience.
Yes, yeah. So, and then that opens up the possibility that we can do the type of healing work that maybe we simply wouldn't have had the capacity for before.
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah. What breaks my heart is to see women who are moving into the menopause thing and are hating it. Like, this is terrible. My life is over. Like, I'm suffering. I've got to work out harder and starve myself to keep this body I've had. Like, you're not keeping it, sister. You're not. But that's the point. You're not supposed to. So, you know, really trust your body's process.
Yeah, because that other version is actually always occurs to me when I hear people talk about it, is that it's choosing to go backwards.
Like,
can't go
why?
backwards. Well, we can't. Like, it's just, that's not how human experience works. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. And it sucks all the joy out of aging. You know? we're not meant to be stagnant. So it's kind of like turning 50 and decide you want to be 12 again. It ain't happening, sister. So stop trying to make it. Lay down the weapons you're using against yourself and your body that just cause more trauma. Yeah. Yeah. And as around, you know, sexuality, certainly when Chris and I got together, I had a lot of, I was really challenged by us because sex wasn't the main driving thing for him.
That was new to you?
Yes. And
Yeah.
so like, it was like, oh, okay. Now what do I have to show up like? Like, you know what I mean? I can't just use this as the thing that pulls us together and keeps him connected to me. I have to be willing to show up a lot more vulnerably, a lot more openly and authentically in order to make this relationship work. So, yeah, that's been different. That's been quite a journey. And we're at a place now, 5 years in, where we're much more open in our conversations around sex and sexuality, but we're still finding our way, you know, like, and consider that when we met, I was basically like, I was going into the last 5 years of perimenopause.
Right.
So a lot has shifted. And so it's been a real practice in not linking things. Does that make sense? So not making meaning where there isn't any.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe always has been, but letting that go.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah. And just being present with somebody who, not that he doesn't love it. I mean, there's no, you know, of course he does. And it's not the main priority in the relationship. It's not the glue that holds us together, where often in the past, I felt like that was the glue.
Okay. So very different.
Yeah. 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 And then, you know, I find with a lot of young people coming up now, there's a lot of things around gender that are getting unpacked and changing in regards to, I think there's a lot of young people coming onto the planet right now who are non-gendered. So there's not even a question of whether or not their genitalia identifies them as male or female. There's no connection anymore, which is really beautiful to see. You know, it's really beautiful to see, because I think that there's been a lot of pain on the planet as we try to force ourselves to be something other than we feel ourselves to be. And as we force identify masculine, feminine, and female, male, and body parts, it creates such a limitation, you know?
Yeah, and I see that translating into the who we love conversation too, right? And then all the identities and labels we felt that, you know, our humanity's attached to that as well and kind of boxed, right?
Yeah. You know, I was talking, so do you know Tien? Tien Milamas does training on,
familiar with, but yeah, don't know personally.
Yeah, so he does coaching on gender as a non-gendered trans female to male who still will show up as female sometimes too. So as someone with a lot of experience in that area, he does a lot of training around it. And we were talking about this the other day, about how the labels that we've now put on things, again, so transgender, LGBTQ2, all the other things, is it's still a constraint.
Yes. It occurs to that when I hear it too. Yes.
Right. And yet, you know, what I said to him is, it is a constraint. There's no doubt about that. However, it's an attempt to, I see it as an attempt, and as an attempt, or an attempt maybe is not the right word, but it's like a return of your power. So to be able to say, I don't care what you see when you look at me, this is how I want to be identified. It's like a taking back of power that has been perpetually disallowed, or you know what I'm saying? Like there's been this little there's been such a condemnation and a misunderstanding and a fight against people being able to identify how they feel, that this is like a step towards.
Yes, and it may be a necessary step, and it's not the end point though either. It will continue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always, when I hear you say that too, I always think about like myself and many people I know in my world who, you know, when you, those labels, then you know, if you're a human being with female genitals and people know that and label you as such, and then you fall in love with a person who has the same genitals as you, and suddenly you must now be labeled gay, apparently. And it's like, but I that person might not identify with that either, right? And and it's just like, that's another box and thing you're supposed to fit in, and if you don't, there's all kinds of ramifications.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and so I think that we're, as society, this is like the squishy part.
Yeah, squishy and messy.
Squishy and messy.
Definitely.
So, you know, for people who, when you identify that way, when we start to really unpack that stuff, and for those that are willing to like be in that really uncomfortable, squishy, messy place and still stay standing in their wholeness, then that's when there's an opportunity. That's when we really actually move the conversation forward, move the evolution of mankind forward. So it's like, you know, we've taken this on, so might as well go for it.
And keep going.
And keep going.
Please. Yeah.
Please keep going. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where do you want me to go from here?
Well, I don't nowhere specific, but so I'm just seeing what I'm curious about based on what you've told me, because I mean, I could go off on this whole conversation around sexuality and identity and like you know who we love and all those sorts of things, but I'm kind of wanting to circle back to you, I think. What about so you talked a little bit about what's changed around how you do relationships when sex became not the hook and the connector. I can't remember how you worded it exactly. And what's that? Would you be willing to share a little bit more about what that looks like, what it has caused you to become or to be or to step into? You touched on intimacy and vulnerable, and I think people hear those words and still maybe don't know what that means.
In
real life.
So I mean, so as much as we have this idea somehow that sex is the ultimate intimacy, but it's not.
No,
it isn't. It's just
it's an intimacy
and
one.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. It is one type of intimacy, and for someone like me who used it as much more than like a consummation of a love relationship, which is not how I used it for most of the time, then intimacy is really like, if I take this away, what's the intimacy that's left in that place? So it was like working in that, like what do we do now to create intimacy with each other if this isn't the thing? If bodies smashing into each other isn't like, you know, the place in which we lay our intimacy or rely on for our intimacy, then what? You know, and what was interesting too, and I don't know how this relates yet, but it's coming up to speak into. So I know I see it. Okay, so I also realized that I had been showing up in the world to attract the male gaze, the female gaze as well, but more so the male gaze. So I started to realize, like, what the hell is that? What is why am I concerned? Why am I concerned what they think of me? A, and B, what is this costing me? Like, what's the price of this to me and who I am and how I think of myself? What am I not saying because of it? What am I shutting down? Who am I, how am I showing up and not showing up in the world because of it? And like, I think back, and there's no way I would have gotten on a call like this wearing only lip gloss before.
Right.
This is my hair I woke up with.
Right.
This sweater is old and, you know, not attractive. But there's no way I would have not shown up in
ready, kind of
done.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out of the, I mean, I remember saying, there is no way I will ever leave the house in a pair of tights or sweatpants. It ain't happening. Like,
every day over here.
You're looking at it. The other night I was gonna go out and have dinner with somebody, and I was what did I do? I did my hair, and I put a little bit of cover up on, like a light moisturizer tinted thing, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll put some mascara on, and then I thought, don't be stupid, you're gonna forget it's there and rub your eyes. Like,
that's literally just what came into my head, if I may interject there, because I've always been sporadic around makeup. I tended to only wear it out. I was never like an office, you know, and I've gotten even less frequent and less consistent. And so now when I put it on, I am so at risk of just going just to white, and it's just like I wouldn't even know it's smeared all over my face. I have that thought. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Or like I just rub my eye.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed in like detaching myself from that and caring less, like I literally don't care anymore. Well, let me correct that. Most of the time I don't care. What's one of the pieces that's really happened is that I noticed. Does that make sense? Like when something like that is coming up, I notice it right away. Like, what are you doing? Why do you care what they think of you right now? Like, are you gonna actually just do that little weird thing you were gonna do to get the attention? Like, so there's that piece. I notice it right away, and then because before it was just like all the time. It was just how I operated in the world.
Yeah.
And then also just that I'm very comfortable showing up how I want to show up. But here's what's now where I'm moving into now is that, so for a while I went all the way to the other end. Like I just didn't give a shit.
We tend to do that. We kind of go other end of the spectrum, and then we find our true kind of bearing. Yeah. I've noticed a lot change. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I went from tight little power suits and full makeup and hair to like slob.
Jogger pants and sweatshirt.
And
nothing.
So so where I'm finding myself now is now I'm actually finding my true self. You know, like I'm finding my true style, and I dress appropriately for what's going on. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if I'm going out in the middle of the forest, I'm in workout clothes for a hike. And if I'm going out for dinner, I will put on a little dress and do my hair or whatever, right? And I always wear earrings.
So I'm assuming because you like them.
I love them. I can't wear necklaces. So, but I can wear earrings and then, you know, rings and stuff like that. But they're not always, there's no attachment to it, I think is what has shifted for me around that.
Like maybe versus maybe I don't know if this is you specifically, but versus the point in our life where we won't run to the corner store without full face, for example, that people sometimes experience. Yeah.
And then I moved over to the Sunshine Coast.
Makes my whole heart restrict, but
right? Yeah. And now I live on the Sunshine Coast where 90% of the people do not wear makeup.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there is that, there definitely are those cultural norms. I spent a year doing training in a program that was based in the US. And so I was going to Seattle, and Seattle's, one of their more West Coasty, towns. So a little more aligned with our kind of norms. But I just remember there being, fellow participants who were American, like about 2/3 were American, and commenting on that. They're like, yeah, Canadians women wear way less makeup, hey, in general. And I'm like, based on what I'm seeing, I would agree in general, yes. It just is different cultural norms too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
it's kind of a nice gift into where that came up is where you're living now is just a lovely invitation to explore what that's like for you. Do you like it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that for wherever women are at in their lives right now, whether they're kind of just exploring or they're moving in, that it's just stay open to what's going on in the moment. There's not and there's nothing wrong with somebody wearing makeup all the time. There's
there's no like you're a better woman because you step away from that.
No, not at all. It's just I think the piece is, do you feel free to be how you are, or do you feel like you have to in order to be valuable? Is what
and maybe
is
who is it for too, Who are you doing
and who's it for?
Yeah, I can see that too, because I remember being at a women's party. It was so many years ago. I don't even know if it may have been before I moved to BC. If not, it was in the first early years. And we got talking about shaving, right? Women shaving, us as women. And I remember a woman saying so clearly, she was like, I don't shave because I would never do that for men. And I remember going, wait a minute, do I do it for men? Like I do armpits and like chin, legs is all I've ever had really done at that point. And I was like, armpits, I think I do because it would be so outside of my social norm to not, and I do fear being judged for that. And I don't know if I care if I have armpit hair. I hadn't really tried it. I started shaving and I always shaved. And then, but legs, I was like, I actually love how it feels when I first shave them. So I think I'd still do it, even if like the world decided women don't need to shave them. It got me thinking, like, who am I doing it for? And, if I'm like, oh no, I'm going on a date and there might be some stubble, and I panic and shave, like, I'm probably doing that for him then, right? Which is not wrong per se, but just to be aware, right? Just to be aware
totally.
of where I'm choosing from. And if I'm doing it because I'm like, it makes me feel lovely, then I'm doing it for me,
Exactly.
Just to notice that too. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the stuff I did when I was younger, like lasering pubic hair, I regret that so hard now.
I don't know if that's painful, but because I haven't done it, but I immediately went to like that. It sounds like it hurts. Does it? Yeah.
It hurts. Yeah. And all the times I went and had it waxed and all of that stuff, and now I'm like, I kind of wish I could grow a 70s bush, and I can't because I lasered.
Right. That's somewhat permanent, isn't it? Yes.
Options are now limited. It's kind of irritating.
Yeah. I feel like I was very behind the times on the whole pubic hair shaving, because I feel like I woke up one day and it was the norm and I missed it completely, and I was like, when did this become something everybody does? Like, I missed it completely. And then I was like, I don't know if I want to. I had to really kind of sit with that for a bit and decide what because I actually have a very I have a strong attachment to my pubic hair, in the sense of, to me, it's very much what has me be woman versus child. And then I remember getting it being an incredibly exciting, proud, like, me and a girlfriend got it before the rest of our friends, which probably was a little bit of we're better than you, so whatever, we're your kids. But we were just so excited. We loved it. And I still have that, and I don't care what anyone else does, and I've kind of like, okay, don't not do it just because I'm going to be like, damn it, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to go, just maybe check it out and see if you like it. Yeah. And I remember trying, I never did anything with like professionals. So I just was like, I'm not paying for someone to do that to me. Probably a money thing as much as anything, but it also sounded painful.
It is.
Yeah. And I remember in the end being like, yeah, look at that. Like, I ended up in some sort of, like, I think, anyways, I ended up with my version, which is different than what I was when I was 20. but it's also like I tried the full removal and all the things, and I was like, I get why people like this, but I don't love it. So yeah, but I mean, so it's interesting. We're all in such different choices around that too, men and women, right?
Totally.
Now whole world around that, like, and then I remember the first time I was with a man, he removed all. I was thrown because that's not what had been my experience. I was just okay, I don't like love it or hate it, but like it's fine. I didn't have a preference either way, but I just like, oh, this is the new thing. I got it. Okay.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah. And there's lots of attachment around that. And again, like you were saying, it's like a buy-in to what everybody thinks is cool in the moment. And I can remember there
is a trend and style factor there too, right?
Totally.
Like
totally.
And hair and
Yeah. And I remember a guy I was dating saying to me, I dated this woman, and her thing was no women should have hair anywhere from the neck down. And I agree. And he says, and I think that's perfect. And I'm like, okay. Shortly thereafter, we broke up because the whole thing was just disgusting to me. Like, what? Excuse me? The ideal woman is bald from the neck down. What? Weirdo. I
can't relate to that either, but some people do. Totally. Women too, right? I mean, again, maybe check in about what that's really about. Is it truly you or not truly you? I think it's smart to
this is it.
All of our choices, but I remember being on a date once too with someone, and like they were new in my world, and them making some comment about like how a woman has to have nothing or else, and I kind of went, okay, so we're not going there in our relationship like that.
Yeah, no.
Decision made. Yeah,
exactly.
And I was like, that's fine, and there's you can find loads of women who agree with you on that, so that's great. I'm not
exactly. I'm not them.
Yeah,
and I think that's the other piece, right? Is there's also a piece around how programmed are meant to have decided that that's okay, that that's really what's sexy, when in fact it is literally, it's like, anyways, we could like roll down that road for a long time,
for like an hour. Well, and I mean, given that like I grew up in the 70s, and I remember seeing a video of the Eagles. It was the Eagles, the band, and it was some of their tour, and it had some like full on, like, it had a lot of naked shots because that's what they did on tour apparently. Well, I think it also was just 70s. To me, that's part of the 70s lifestyle, but and like it was full hair growth on women. That was normal. That was the norm then.
Totally.
It was unusual to have it shaped or gone. And I only remember it being like that in magazines, like Playboy and stuff, not women I knew.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's accurate, but it feels like that was accurate in my world anyway.
Yeah.
I always related it to a thing those professional people do, but like us women out here in the real world, no. Like that's kind of how I related to it. I think. And there probably was some judgment because I was taught to like judge the women in the magazines as not. There was some negativity there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Anyway. I like your I'm gonna loop back to what you said about intimacy and relationships because body, all those things. And because it landed for me, and probably because it's actually a phase in life where I'm quite at, and it sort of reflects my experience right now, is the idea of like take away the sex, not that you necessarily have to actually take away the sex, but like take that sex out of the equation, and what is there, right? And how do we connect? If that's not the thing that has us connected, I like that as a practice, and almost like a reminder of if we want deeper, beyond connections beyond that. That's a place to check in about.
Yeah, because
I can relate to your story because I'm very similar in my life
trajectory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that if you're considering a partner that you're going to be with until one of you dies, there's going to be a point in which that's just not available as readily necessarily. There's no guarantee that you will be able to have sex until you die, period.
Right.
There's different things that occur in our bodies and all of that stuff. So if that's the main point of intimacy, what are you going to do? Like if it's not available, then what? So, developing intimacy in other ways creates a more solid foundation to relationship.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that when people hear the word intimacy, they automatically don't go to sex, and when they hear the word sex, they automatically go, or sexuality, they automatically think sex acts. I find that kind of fascinating about our culture.
Mm-hmm.
I've had internet, and I call them internet conversations across all the platforms and stuff, and you play with wording around what will you do to sort of market your stuff, and just watching comments, I'm like, oh, people hear sex or sexuality and they assume having intercourse mostly,
Mm.
specifically, and then that's what it appears to me. And when they hear intimacy, yeah, sex is the first, like the physical is the default
Mm.
assumption that we're talking about. It's I wonder, I
Yeah.
don't know, that maybe, I mean, that's based on who I'm connected with, both people I know in real life versus people I know on the internet. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
Some strangers to me, but I have a broad base. I don't follow the social media etiquette where you're supposed to have met people. I gave that up. Like, you look interesting. I want to know what you're doing. I'm saying yes to your question. Yeah. But yeah, it's just interesting, and I wonder. I think that's too big of a conversation with what time we have left. But yeah, like around what does that say about how we're doing relationships as a whole too, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
it also says something about the limitation of the English language.
yes, that's true. We don't have a whole bunch of words for
No.
the nuances of something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's very nuanced. I mean, intimacy can happen between me and I have an intimate relationship with one of the beautiful trees in my yard,
True. Yes.
and that has nothing to do with sex.
Great. Although it could, but it apparently doesn't. I only say that because I follow lots of people who are into all kinds of ways of loving and doing sex, and it's like my
Yeah.
eyes are open constantly to what people are up
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else that if you kind of think about, who knows who will listen to this? I am assuming more women, but you never know. Anything else that occurs to you that you just would like to have people know, be aware of, parting thoughts? And it's okay if there aren't.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate that, if we're just constantly open and available to what happens to be going on in the moment for us, that there's no need for judgment. There's no need to like be upset about what's happening, although you will be, and then there's no need to be upset about the fact that you're upset. But if we can be as present as possible with the stage that we're in and curious about what that might offer us that wasn't available to us before, like if you're somebody like me whose body has changed through perimenopause, what's available to you now with the body that you're in that wasn't available to you before? Like, get curious about that, right? Rather than make it something that has to be changed or altered or is good or bad or any of that stuff.
Yeah. And so that's, to me, that speaks to just that, maybe slowing down enough to notice and be conscious and just paying attention.
Yep.
For what our experience is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you for coming to talk today. Coming to talk as if we're in the same room, we're not. But for coming to my that just reminded me of like Mr. Dress Up or something. Anyways, coming to chat and share your story and your experiences. Is there anything you want to have people know just around what you do for a living and how you serve people, slash if they want to reach out to you? That's up to you. I'm just realizing I'm putting you on the spot. Sorry,
sure. Yeah, no, my handle is spiritual badass. So,
Okay.
all of the work that I do, mostly I work with women who are, does it identify as female, as women. And a lot of it is around, they're in the middle of some shit and they just can't do it anymore. So I'm usually the one, I'll be the one that they call and go, I'm done. I need to like fix some shit or I'm going to lose my mind. And then I'm also a channel and an intuitive. So if anybody kind of wants to get to know me, I started doing with my email list, I started doing an email series that just keeps repeating, where people drop in what they're dealing with. I do a channeled video the next week. The week after, I do some coaching around what came through, and the week after, I give them an action. So it's really, it's a free and it's a great way to get some help if and get to know the work that I do as well. So it's jillprescott.ca. Anywhere that you click on there that says join the email list or get some more love in your inbox. If you do that, you'll be on it.
Got it. Nice. Thank you. Yeah, because I like, if you're open to people reading it, I like people to be able to be clear on how they can do so. So
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to kind of close things here. I really appreciate you being willing to share your time and you with us.
Thanks, Lara.
Thank you.
Okay.